Kieran Wallace, and I'm back in the hot seat after Shug kept it warm for me last week. We're just 42 days away from the start of the football season, and at long last, we've had plenty of news. We've had Kyler Murray getting told to do his homework, Julio Jones linking up with the GOAT in Tampa Bay, and a whole waft of retro jerseys and helmets revealed. Won't keep you too much longer, we won't keep the subject of helmets for too long, because we've got two waiting right here for you. First up, our usual co-host, Shug. How are you doing?
I'm good, mate. Enjoyed switching at the role of yours last night. The pressure seat last week, but I'm happy to be back.
You done well. You done really well, actually. My wife gave you a compliment saying that you sounded very professional. I think that's the first time anybody's ever said that about you in all your life.
She's a good judge of character.
Ah, well, she chose me, so you're right. And across, what are you going to say, mate?
Also, I was going to say, when you take on a job, you want to leave it in a better place than you found it.
You've done exactly that.
My apologies.
But I'll be handing you back the reins next week, no doubt about that. Anyway, we've got a fellow Dolphin to you across the room here. Run out of guys to come on as guests, so I had to turn to some family members, so Tony's kindly stepped in. Tony, how are you?
Good evening, not too bad. How are you guys doing?
We're good.
Making my professional podcast debut tonight.
Oh, no pressure. Start like you mean to go on, as they say. Am I right, Shug?
Right. He'll set it on nicely.
Yeah, I believe in you. We both believe in you.
Thank you very much.
Anyway, we'll kick it off by a quick introduction, Tony, and we'll ask you what we asked the guests when they've been coming on the previous weeks. What got you into the NFL?
I first got into the NFL. I chose my team when I was about 5 or 6 years old. We were on holiday in Florida, and I don't remember too much about the holiday, but I do remember bringing back a pennant that had the Dolphins on it with a helmet, and from then on they were always my team, and that's it. Through bad, they've been my team for the last 40 years or so.
That's it, bad and through bad, and I think there's better days ahead.
Hopefully.
You said you're a Dolphins fan. We've got more Dolphins than SeaWorld on this tonight. So, in terms of the Dolphins, like I've said to you there, I think there's better days ahead. Like, what's your expectations for the season?
Well, last season there was quite high expectations, and beating the Patriots in the first game of the season, you think, here we go. Nobody saw us losing the next 7 games and then winning the next 7 games after that. It was such a rollercoaster season last season that there's glimpses in there, but there was the old bottle jobs as well, getting beat with Jacksonville last kick of the ball and things like that. But at the end of the season as well, we end up positive record and clear out of the coach, clear out some of the players and bringing in some quality upgrades as well. But hopefully we'll challenge that division. But as the Patriots are going down, the Bills are coming up, so it's kind of hard to find a place at the top of that division.
It is, and that's the beauty of the NFL. It's competitive everywhere you look, and then as soon as one person slips, the next guy's ready to step up on and off the pitch in terms of teams and players. You've brought in Tyreek Hill this season.
Yes, we sure have.
Massive upgrade. Will you be drafting him in our fantasy league this year, or can you not be bothered with the hassle of the man sitting across from us here?
Well, I think I'm number 6 in the draft, and I think Shug is 3 or 4 in the draft, something like that.
I'm number 4, I think, so you're absolutely no chance of getting the cheetah.
Oh, well, we'll wait and see. A bit of history here. We've been in this league for 2 years, and I must get at least 5 or 6 text messages a day saying, give me the cheetah, give me the cheetah, give me the cheetah. And I think towards the end of the first season, I did relent, and obviously Shug went on to win the whole bloody thing. But it didn't happen last year. But we'll wait and see.
Yeah, keeping on that, Tony, you went with a tactic last year which worked for you the previous year because you seemed to do well. It was going with a sort of 1-2 punch of drafting a quarterback high and drafting a very high wide receiver in Tyreek Hill because you had Patrick Mahomes as well. So it seemed to be when they were winning games and when they were on top of things, you were winning games in fantasy.
Yeah, it's a bit of a boom or bust. There were times even last season when Mahomes wasn't on his game or Hill was injured or things like that. And it's kind of the time that happens, and whenever, obviously on bye week and things like that as well, you're kind of left with the dregs to replace them because it's full all ins. And as you say, it worked for a bit. When they're playing well, it works for a bit. But I don't know if it's the right strategy, clearly, because I've not got to the playoffs yet.
Yeah, to be fair, it worked for Drew last year, having Matthew Stafford and Cooper Cup in the same
Yeah.
team. Don't know if he really knew what he was doing, but it certainly worked for him. He'll be guesting on here, and I'm sure he'll talk us down the way we talk about him. So, we'll crack on with the news anyway. This week we'll start right at the top of the hour with Kyler Murray. We spoke about him a lot last week, didn't we, Shug? His massive contract, $230.5 million over the course of the next 5 years, $160 million of it guaranteed. What was leaked online this week from Ian Rappaport was one of the conditions of the contract that he would have to watch independent opponent study for 4 hours a week from home. Does this seem a bit crazy?
I think it is crazy. It's a bit embarrassing. Now, I get it if that's the coach's rules. So I think that's pretty normal for a coach to ask for that kind of level of commitment. But to put it in the contract, I just think it's a bit embarrassing for both parties. It mainly embarrasses the player. I think there should be a level of trust and respect in any sport. There should be a bit of trust and respect between the club, the coaches and the player. And to have something like that in the contract, it's just, for me, it's like treating somebody like a kid. And again, touching on it, how are they going to track it? Like, how are they going to keep... I mean, I know he's to do it on his iPad, but he could be sitting doing that and playing the PlayStation at the same time or getting his agent.
It's good that you say this because the iPad is actually tracked that the Cardinals have given him and they can monitor him. And the reason for this is because Kyler Murray is well known for being a gamer. And
But again, how can you tell it's... they got a track that, I mean, I'd imagine there's still a way around it. There's a way you can still cut corners. But for me, if you've got a player like that, that's not that committed to... I mean, you should either judge him on his results and say, this guy's a wee bit... we can rely on him to do the homework, but he does the business on the field, so we trust him. Or he's not committed enough that he's not, watching the footage and doing those bits outside. Which is it? Do you trust him or not?
Yeah, I like the way that you say there might not be a way around it. I mean, have you ever seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off? When he's got the rope attached to the mannequin in the bed.
So Homer Simpson when he works from home and he's got the wee woodpecker thing hitting the key.
Tony, what's your take on that?
I think it's a case of you got to trust your guys. You know what I mean? And he's a quarterback, so he's the one that's setting out the plays or carrying out the plays. And it should be a case of what they do is the opponent should be worrying about them rather than what he's doing. It's not an arrogant. Obviously, if there's certain defences, you've got to line up how to do it and all the rest of it. But spending 4 hours a day and things like that on tactics, when that should be coached rather than where you go and do your homework type thing. Because I've got a 16-year-old boy, and I know if you told him to do your homework, it doesn't get done. And it's just it gets tracked and all the rest of it. But that should be done on the field. You know what I mean? You should be setting up your opposition in the training field to say, this is how the Chargers line up, this is how the Rams line up, how are you going to beat them, sort of thing, rather than, because you keep somebody an iPad for 4 hours and they'll soon be playing Candy Crush. I wouldn't worry about
that. Yeah, I look at it from two sides. There's no smoke without fire, and there must be something going on there where they've gave him all this money, they want bang for their buck, they want everything that they can get out for them, and they obviously don't believe that he's doing what they ask him to do. On the other side, there's pressure on him now. If things don't go wrong on the pitch or he reads a defence wrong, fingers will start pointing. The media are cutthroat in terms of that. I think they look across to what you call the Breakfast Club at the LA Rams as well, where it came out last year that at 5 a.m. in the morning, Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford were in that training centre. They were watching videotape for hours on end before they started practice, and you've seen how much it paid off with a Super Bowl. I think it's more that the Cardinals know what they've got there, and it's just channeling it in the right way. So for one guy stepping up, getting a contract, getting a slap in the wrist, to another one retiring. Shug, he was one of your guys last year. Chris Carson has retired from the Seahawks. What are we looking at now, fantasy terms, for Chris Carson? Who's the next man up? I know you mentioned him last week, so I think you're going to be big in a certain name.
Yep. I think, first of all, I'm quite gutted that Carson always went for him. He was always a big player, and then that injury it's a heartbreaker for him. And I think they knew at the time it was going to be really serious and it was going to be something that could long-term happen. So it's sad for the guy that he's had to retire. But it's down to Penny or Walker really from that. And I think I spoke about him last week. Penny's still got those. He's got injury problems as well. I think it's a big one for Walker to step up. Now it's official, Carlson's out. It's Walker's season, really. I don't think the Seahawks will be great next year by any means, but Walker could really step up for them.
You're bang on the money there. I don't think Rashad Penny's given us anything to say, right, he's the guy, he's going to play 17 games a season. I think it's Walker's time, and he's landed at a very good spot. It's been a long time since maybe Marshawn Lynch that the Seahawks have really had a dominating running back, new quarterback there as well, new scheme. I think Kenneth Walker, the third's right and is on the wall. He's going to do well. Would you agree, Tony?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Seahawks have went stale over the last few years with Wilson and the Legion of Boom leaving and all the rest, and gradual decline over the last few years, but it gives them a chance to get a fresh start. Carson was a good player, always a good point scorer for Shug, but it's just one of these things. It's nature of the game in America, the American Football League, that the injuries just do take their toll sometimes, and it is well to bow out now than to just have another season of not being up to it.
Yeah, he actually underwent neck fusion surgery, which is quite an intense surgery. So, yeah, we wish him all the best in his recovery. But in terms of guys like Kenneth Walker's stock going up, looking across to Julio Jones signing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, would you say his stock now goes up, playing with a top 5 fantasy quarterback in Tom Brady, Tony?
I think it does. Last year in my fantasy team, I think I had about 5 guys called Jones at the same time, and he was one of them. It was kind of after seeing what he'd been the last few seasons, he never quite hit the heights last season, but as you say, Brady will find targets. If you make the runs, he'll find you. And going down there is a new lease of life, and you might see rejuvenated Julio Jones down there.
Yeah, it was almost non-existent the past 2 years, whether it be injuries or Ryan Tannehill completely forgetting that he actually exists. Shug, would you be looking to draft Julio Jones, or would you still be looking to guys like Jarvis Landry or Russell Gage even?
I think Jones is, as Tony said, I think he's on the up. I think he's not a bad shout. I think also what we could touch on is Brady obviously trusts him. Brady's been involved in that recruitment, so he wants him there, and I think he will do well. So I think he'd be pretty high up in my drafting.
I see what you're saying there. It's kind of like the trade, well, not the trade, them reaching out and getting Antonio Brown. So it's a little less trouble, but you're getting a future Hall of Famer there. He's 33 years old. He might only have a couple of years left in him, and there's no reason why he can't do well at the Bucs. But it's going to be really interesting there. There's a situation there, kind of like the Kansas City Chiefs in fantasy terms, where we don't know who's going to be the definitive wide receiver one. So when I actually looked today at the average ADP for Julio Jones, the average he's getting drafted at is 220, which I find crazy, absolutely crazy. Anyway, another wide receiver, we actually thought he was in PUP, but he's not. He's been spotted back in training camp. Who's the next guy up for the Saints? Is it going to be Michael Thomas? They've got Chris Olave there as well. There's plenty of targets. Do you think you would be drafting Michael Thomas high, Shug?
I mean, he's back in training, but I wouldn't be drafting him high, to be honest. I think he's had a couple of, I think it was last year, was he out for most of the season?
That's right. I actually drafted him. I think he missed the first 7 games through suspension, and then he went on the PUP again with this ankle injury that seems to be reoccurring that's happened this year.
Yeah.
Is he something you'd be looking at too, Tony, or...?
Possibly. I've not been following it closely. Who's replacing Breeze at quarterback this year for the Saints? Is it they bring the new guy in, or they?
No, it's Jameis Winston.
Is it Jameis Winston? Winston is, again, he's one of these guys who's always there, and whether he might have had his peak a few years ago with the Buccaneers or whatever, or he can step up to take the place for a legend in Breeze, that would determine, I think, again, who plays in front of him, how good they're going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a similar situation to what's going on over at the San Francisco 49ers. Kyle Shanahan came out this week and declared Trey Lance as a QB1. Also very honest about the situation with Garoppolo, saying that had it not been for surgery, they would have traded him already, paying him with a hell of a lot of money. Would you now be looking to draft Trey Lance higher up, now knowing that he's the 49ers QB1?
Yeah, I think that goes without saying. The 49ers have been good the last few years. Obviously, Jimmy G's been the driving force there, and I mean, they've got a proper unit getting to Super Bowl a couple of years ago and things like that. But now that it's definitive and there's no hanging about who's it going to be, I think that makes it's a no-brainer if that's who you end up with.
Yeah, absolutely. And Shug, on the topic of training camp and what we've seen this week, and a lot of things being revealed, we've also seen Aaron Rodgers come out as Cameron Poe from Con Air. I'm going to put you in the spot here, right? You're the man, you're the quarterback, you're turning up. Who are you turning up as out a movie?
Oh, that's a great show, actually.
Can I guess?
I can guess, aye.
Homer Simpson.
Nah. Michael J. Fox from Back to the Future.
Oh, I love that.
Classic Nikes on, the denims.
Rolling up in the DeLorean.
Strolling in a hoverboard.
I love it. What?
I'd turn up as a water boy, that's who I'd be turning up as. Adam Sandler,
yeah. Oh, Bobby Boucher, I love it. I absolutely love it. Something which we kind of missed out on last week. It happened around about the time we were recording, so we hadn't spoke about it. And it's the demand for tickets at the moment. Well, not so much at the moment. It happened last week. It happened on Tuesday as well for the NFL Europe games. First ever game taking place in Germany. We've seen a queue for tickets of close to 750,000 fans. And for anybody that doesn't know how big the NFL and American football is in Germany, they say there's a market of 19 million fans there. That's some serious numbers. What's your feelings on that, Tony? Like, I know you buy a lot of tickets, go to a lot of sporting events and stuff. Are you feeling it's becoming harder and harder to get your hands on tickets nowadays? Or is it just that it's the first time in Munich, it's Tom Brady, it might be some folks' last ever chance to see him?
I think it's a combination of everything there. As you say, it's the first NFL game in Germany and the first affiliated game since the European League folded 20 years ago, whatever it was. Between that, the demand for it, as you say, Brady, the Packers went to London. I'm getting mixed up now. Just generally, if you build it, they'll come. The Germans will go and see anybody if it's a proper affiliated game, and there's a demand. There's clearly a demand for it, but they'll come, and that's it. And I'm struggling. Sorry, you need to edit this, but I kind of think what to say. But they're really. The Germans are desperate for something to happen. London's been getting all the big games over the last few years. There's a game in Mexico, and the Germans have shown that they've got an appetite for it, and now they're proving it. I think it will lead to more games in Germany, maybe to the detriment of London, I don't know. But it's certainly healthy for the NFL and for the supporters.
Yeah, and it's a great experience. Myself and Shug went down a few years ago to see the Saints play against Miami Dolphins, and I'm looking here online, and the cheapest ticket I can find for the London games on their own is £594, which is completely ridiculous. For your everyday NFL fan, you're wanting kids to get into it. There needs to be something done about that, and I know that just doesn't fall on the NFL, but in terms of your own experience, Shug, talk us through what it's like at these London games.
I mean, I loved it. I thought they got the whole thing spot on. And for me, it'd be easy for the NFL just to send to send a Pro Bowl or something over that didn't have really a lot on it. But they send decent games, a decent card every year, and they just do these games properly. And it's disappointing to hear that. I didn't know that, but the prices being that high from kind of touts and stuff like that, that is disappointing because, as you said, it was great for us. It was like a taste, a real NFL game. You felt really part of it. It just felt the real deal. Everything they done in the stadium was class for it. Was fit for NFL. They just done it perfectly. So it was a really good experience. And as you said, something needs to be done so that it's accessible to the normal fan.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And you look as well, the money that the NFL put into Tottenham Hotspur's new stadium. They've got their own dressing rooms there. They've got their own pitch that slides in and out from the retractable surface. And we look as well around about the time that they were putting the money in there that Shad Khan tried to bid, 500 million for Wembley. Do you think, in your own experience and seeing the demand there in terms of like the season tickets down there, the single tickets that we sell, what we've seen in Munich now as well, do you think it's Europe's time to have an NFL-based team?
Absolutely. I don't think there's any doubt the fan base is there. And if there was teams coming to play in Europe against somebody, and there's somebody people could get behind, as we've kind of spoke about on here, always sort of support teams for random reasons, that we kind of saw something or we watched a game when we were young or whatever, but see an actual team that pretty much the full of Europe could get behind, whether it's a British team or a German team or whatever, I think that would really catch on if they were a good quality team. And as I said, seeing how the NFL do it, they do it right.
Yeah, totally agree with you there. And I think it was at one of the NFL live events with Sky Sports that we were at, Tony, and they spoke about this subject and they said, like Shug touched on there, we've all got our teams and we'd all lap it up and get behind whatever team they put here. What's different with us here than it is in America? We're very loyal to our team. Would we all put our teams to one side to go and support whichever team come to Europe?
I think it might be one of the ones that it's your second team, if you know what I mean. It's the ones that are accessible to you. You can go and see. If somebody like the Jaguars moved here full time, as been talking about before, people would go and watch them. Every game, whether it's at Glasgow or London or Manchester, whatever, would be sold out. And you'd still go. You guys have been there, and for all the things I've seen on the TV about the London games, is it doesn't matter who's playing. If you're a Dolphins fan, a Giants fan, a Jets fan, you'll wear your top, but you'll pick a side for the day. I think it'll be more committed if there is a team which is there to be our team, whatever they're called and whoever it is. But again, it's the issue of that they have to expand the league or somebody moves over here full time. It would be great to see, but whether it happens is another story.
Touching on something you said there about expanding the league, if it's not to be a European-based NFL team, there's definitely a gap in the market for something between February to September, like a spring league. I know they've tried it before with the World League of American Football in Europe. Is there a gap in the market for something like this in Europe that could run between February to September?
Well, I think they should do something. Again, it's a totally different idea, which kind of on that as a sort of the way it is structured at the moment is the 17-league season and then the playoffs and the Super Bowl. They could do a sort of FA Cup, if you know what I mean. There's 32 teams there. Over 6 weeks, you could have a small competition, whether it's the teams from the NFL or affiliates to them who are based, say, like the New York Glasgow Giants, for talking sake, sort of thing, and then they play each other and then have a small competition. But it has all the NFL commentators, all the NFL rights, has all the branding and everything else. Maybe that's something, just an idea that could get off the ground, but it would certainly fill the gap for a couple of months anyway. But again, it's these players train for these 16, 17 games a year, and having to do an extra 6 or 7 games in the off-season might not be too appealing, but it's an option. It's something to think.
We had teams like the London Monarchs, the Barcelona Dragons, Frankfurt Galaxy. We also had our own Scottish Claymores. Would you go and support teams like that if they came here?
If they had some, I mean, I remember I went to a Scottish Claymores game when I was young, and I just remember the full experience being really good. I'd never seen anything like that. And I think when you're a kid, you enjoy any sort of live sport that you go to. But the thing was done really, really well from what I remember. But the issue was, I think that it wasn't purpose-built stadiums at the time. They didn't really have the demand, and they were playing inside Murrayfield that was kind of a quarter full, and it just didn't really have the atmosphere, or didn't really seem to catch on. But I think if they got the product right, then I definitely think there'd be a demand for it, and it'd be something you'd be interested in getting behind. I think you'd need to have it on at a good time for everybody. I know sometimes they do the rugby like on a Friday night, something like that. If it was well priced, if it was, as I said, in a smaller stadium that was full and a good atmosphere, you know, you could drink and stuff like that at it, then I think it would do all right.
Yeah, there's certainly, like you say, there is a gap in where they would have to put it. If it was on a Friday night that it was very accessible for folk to go to, the likes of, it would work because it wouldn't really go head to head with the NFL in a way that it would be a spring league, and it would open up the door of opportunity for maybe players that went undrafted, players from Europe to showcase their talent. Because I know things like NFL UK Academy is running and it's doing quite well at the moment. I think Neil Reynolds' son actually got drafted to one of the teams over there. You've also got Oceania Euros, NFL Africa is also kicked off as well. So outside of the USA, there seems to be a demand, and there should be opportunity for players like that. It can't just be that we just look at the one place. But even if it's not that, and we talk about like gap in the market there, it was announced just last week as well that The Rock and his business partner, which is his ex-wife, Dani Garcia, the plans going forward for next spring for the XFL to launch again. Is this going to take off? Is it going to be popular? What do you think, Tony? Is it really going to go the way that we think it will?
I don't know. It's hard to judge. The proof is in the pudding. You've got to give these things a go, you know what I mean? And whether it takes off or not, I'll be honest, I don't know too much about it. So, but it'd be good to have something, as you say, in between times, something to watch, you know what I mean? It'd be good.
Yeah, Chuck, what's your memories of the XFL before it disbanded for coronavirus? I know you were into it.
The beer snake.
You used to send me videos all the time of the beer snakes going up the stands, but
again, for me, I think there's more an appetite for something like that for European fans than there maybe is for it to really be that popular in America, because I think American sports, typically, everybody's used to it running for a few months and then that's it, and they move on to the next sport. So I think it's very much when the Super Bowl finishes, I feel as if Americans sort of stop talking about it and then they go and focus on something else. It's basketball at that time, or then it's baseball. I think they kind of split their time amongst the sports. So that's probably why it's not really picked up. But I think in terms of Europe, we're used to watching things all year round, and I know we now find ourselves the minute Super Bowl finishes, we're like, what are you going to do on a Sunday night now? If it was marketed better and it was popular, we would probably watch.
Would you watch it if it was like the way Vince McMahon ran it back in the day?
It was chaos. Absolute chaos.
It's chaos. See, when I was looking this stuff up, and I can remember watching the documentary ESPN done called That Was the XFL, and it is crazy. Some of the stuff is nuts. And when I was looking it up, it was saying they used to have a player called Rod Smart, okay? And in the back of his jersey, he had He Hate Me. They were allowed to put their nicknames in the back of the jerseys. Vince McMahon kind of run it like the WWE, but there was storylines fixed to the games. See, at the start of the games, there was no coin toss. There was a 30-yard scramble where a player from either team would start 30 yards away from the ball, and they would both just come into the middle. It was like a destruction derby of human beings. And I think one of the guys separated his shoulder in the first game. He was out for the rest of the season. I mean, it took off like wildfire. There was 54 million viewers in the first week. But I think they did try and go head-to-head. In terms of the nicknames in the back of the jerseys, I imagine that was like Scottish football or soccer for any of our American listeners. Could you see that taking off in Scotland?
It would be an absolute riot, wouldn't it?
It would. No. What would Alan McGregor have in the back of his top?
Big shagger.
It would be good. Nah, but I look at it. I touched on something I've already said there, and it was like, it is development for guys that didn't really make the cut. I think in terms of when we talk about the Vince McMahon era of XFL, there were 6 Super Bowl winners actually come from that league. So there is certainly a door open. When you look at the one that was sort of squashed by coronavirus there, the names I've got here, PJ Walker, who stepped in as quarterback last year at the Carolina Panthers, Taylor Heineke, QB2 at the Washington Commanders. You've also got Donald Parham and Storm Norton, who are at the Chargers. So there is definitely something there where it could be a development league for guys to step up and do well. So yeah, keeping with that, Shug, and I'm going to look at the flip side of things with it. There's a massive demand over here for more American football. Is it the same sort of thing where we would look to do something along the lines of the Champions League in America? Could it be too far away from, say, the Super Bowl being somewhere in Europe?
I think the Super Bowl is probably sacred, and it should and it will always stay in America, in my opinion. I don't see them moving the Super Bowl. I think you'll see more. You'll see more games, as you said. You might see a permanent team over in Europe. Maybe, I don't think it'll just be Europe. I think there'll be games played all over the world quite regularly. I think it will expand to more of a worldwide game and league. But I don't see the Super Bowl.
As Chuck says, I think the Super Bowl is sacrosanct. That does not move. That isn't they bid for that years in advance. They invest hundreds of millions in hotels and facilities to get the people to come, not just in the stadium, but in the city itself. and it's a week-long celebration. The thing I think that might be an option is a playoff game.
Yeah.
You mean these guys? If something like that came, that would definitely be a stepping stone to move things forward. Again, the issue you've got is people battle all season to get a position to get home field advantage, and if you're say Green Bay they're not going to give up Lambeau Field to go to London in January. That's home advantage. That is their advantage, and it's one thing to say it'd be nice to happen, but in the practical realities, would you give up your season ticket or whatever to not have it anymore? And it'd be good to have though, but it's the practicalities and what it would take is a lot of money, and they'll be handy with that.
Yeah, I like the idea of a playoff game here. It's just some things that you need to take into consideration, whether it would be like jet lag with the time difference, things like that. These huge £300 guys travelling that far for a game and having to settle in and fight off things like jet lag and stiffness and how active they could be. It's a lot of players complain about it as well. I know when we were at the thing with Emmanuel Sanders and he was talking about trying to play a game on a Sunday and then get your recovery into playing Thursday. A lot of them won't even know about a Thursday. And there's something like 100 million involved in that deal.
Mm-hmm.
I think there would be plenty of moans if they came to play across the pond.
I think there would be plenty of moans, but I think not just NFL, but I think American sports in general, maybe I'm being harsh saying American, I think it's becoming worldwide. I think if it makes money, they make it happen. They deal with the logistics. I think if the amount of money was paid for them to go and play in Qatar, they would go across Dubai, Tokyo, they would make it happen.
Again, different sport, but the Spanish Super Cup last season was played in, was it Qatar or Dubai, whatever it was, They played that. The Spanish public weren't happy, but the 4 clubs involved just got a bundle of money and says, away you go. So they were quite happy. Whether they do it again is another story, but it can be done, it has been done. So
let's be honest, NFL teams just get up and move cities and states, so they don't really, there's no room for too much sentiment. No. I do certainly agree the Super Bowl's something that will never be touched, but everything else I think is fair game.
Yeah, when we talk about the contracts like Kyler Murray's this week, these are the kind of deals which enable the teams to pay this sort of money. NFL Europe and the market being bigger, that can increase the salary cap, that these guys can get the big contracts and they can get paid. I know it's an entertainment business. These guys are putting their bodies in the line. It's a short career, but if they want things like the salary cap to increase, then these are the type of things you need to be doing. I think you make a great point as well, talking about Qatar and the Saudis paying a lot of money. I know the WWE, sorry, that's me showing my age, do once a year in Saudi Arabia, and apparently the money that they make off it is ridiculous for an entertainment business where some of the wrestlers are getting paid $3 million a go is wild. You think what they would pay to have the NFL over there?
Yeah. Well, you seem to have had the golf in the last few weeks, and that's only going to get bigger and bigger. So they have the money to throw at it. So again, money talks. So I think it's just a matter of time before the offers are made. But as Shug said earlier, it's kind of that sacrosanct. They don't like moving. They like having their pristine events, and if you take them away, the fans might just not be back. The home fans might not be back to see them when they come home. So that's the thing. And as you say, they're sometimes they're a bit delicate when it comes to the franchises. That if another city comes in and say, "Well, you're losing fans there, let's move them over here, and we'll make sure you get fans in a fancy new stadium." So there's a lot of things to think about before a team commits to moving across, I think.
One thing that I think would be good of it becoming more of a world league with teams from Europe or wherever coming in is that you could actually call the team that wins it the world champions. Because that's one thing that annoys me about American sports, right? I've got no doubt. I used to have this argument with a guy I went to college with. He used to say, yeah, but the best team in the NFL is the best team in the world. And I was like, I'm not doubting that, but you can't not play against anybody else from any other country and say you're world champions.
The reason they call it the world champions is because there was a magazine, it was for the baseball, and whoever won it in the 1940s or something like that, and they declared them the world's, with an S on it, the world's champion. And that's how it basically stuck ever since, and it just gets applied to all the American sports now.
That's interesting.
Classic America. Well, let's be honest, right? we're all classing Usain Bolt as the fastest man in the world, or he was, but he's never raced me.
Well, there we go.
I might be 35, but who's going to prove me wrong? Nobody asked me to race Usain Bolt. If you fancy getting up to share this, then fire away. But no, we'll not keep too long on this subject. I think we've touched on it too long. Fingers crossed the day that we do get some sort of league or even a team over here, because there certainly is a thirst and a hunger for it. There's no doubt about that with the sort of numbers that we're seeing. And for anyone that's listening on YouTube, it would be great if you could subscribe and like. We've got a live mock draft coming up, so it would be a shame if you missed it. And for everyone else that's liked and subscribed and followed us across the podcast apps, it's really appreciated. Please recommend us to your friends. You might like us, you might not like us, but it makes us really happy when you do these things, so it would be great to do that. Anyway, we'll crack on to the next topic. I'm looking for 3 hot takes each from the season ahead.
Right, I'll go first, and it was a guy you touched on earlier, and I'm going to say that Trey Lance will lead the 49ers to the playoffs. Don't know how hot a take that is. I think Tony kind of sort of agreed, but I think he's quite an unknown quantity, but I think he'll lead the 49ers to the playoffs.
Yeah, for someone like Kyle Shanahan to sort of put his foot down and say, he's our guy, and you've seen what he done with Jimmy Garoppolo, and he thinks Trey Lance is possibly better and could go one further. There's no reason they couldn't, but yeah, it's a tough division they're in. No reason they can't, but I'm going to say it's a wee bit lukewarm.
I would say that as well.
I like it. Tony?
I'm going to predict that one of the lesser teams who've failed to achieve in the last couple of years will make the playoffs unexpectedly. Somebody likes of the Detroit Lions, or maybe not quite Jacksonville, but even the Jets. The Jets look as if they've traded well over the period. So I think somebody who isn't normally in the mix at the end of the season will start looking as if they're going to be surprising people.
Yeah, I agree with the Jets. And while we've been recording this, they actually signed Quan Alexander, which is going to be a massive help to their defence. Very experienced player. So the Jets, they are looking good, but it takes me on to my hot take, which is very similar to yours, Tony. I am predicting that the New York Football Giants will win a playoff game this season.
Won't happen.
Nah.
It won't happen.
Nah.
That's as hot as it gets.
Aye, that is hot.
Aye,
That's toasty hot.
Listen, I've seen the videos of training camp, and we're doing things before the ball snapped. There's guys moving. I can't believe my eyes. It is complete hype train. Do you disagree?
I disagree. But my next hot take is more a prediction. Bills will defeat the Dallas Cowboys in the Super Bowl.
Oh, that is hot, because the Cowboys aren't getting to the Super Bowl.
Nah, it's going to happen.
The Bills is the one which is a good possibility happening, but the Cowboys just seem to shoot themselves in the foot as soon as they get excited every single year. And it's been a long time since they were at the top end of the table.
See what you've done there? Cowboys shooting themselves in the foot. You're on it tonight. You're absolutely on it tonight. Okay, what are you saying, Tony? What's your next hot take?
My next hot take is, as teams go up and down, I think you'll see the likes of the Chiefs have had their time, and with the likes of Hill leaving and things like that, I can't see them replicating what they've done over the last 3, 4, 5 years. I think, as we all know, the NFL's cyclical for the bigger sort of teams, and I think the Chiefs have had their day.
Okay, so what you're saying is the Chiefs won't make the playoffs?
It depends on round about them. The Raiders had a good season last year. The Broncos, you just don't know what's going to happen with them. And the Chargers can have a good season, especially with Herbert there. But I think the Chiefs you saw last season they ran out of legs toward the end of the season. I don't know who they've recruited this season, but that's my opinion. I think they've been there, they've been and gone, and time to move on.
I can see it. My next hot take, we're going fantasy here. Allen Robinson to finish as a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. The reason I say that is he got his move to the LA Rams. Nobody's quite sure Robert Woods' situation. OBJ is obviously away. It doesn't look like he'll re-sign. Van Jefferson maybe could step up, but all eyes are going to be on Cooper Kupp. Allen Robinson's a very good wide receiver. He's going to get a lot of targets. Matthew Stafford is one hell of a quarterback, and he proved it last season given the chance. I think Allen Robinson comes into the same bracket there, and he's going to prove himself to be a hell of a wide receiver and a very good team. Any disagreements with Allen Robinson, Shug?
I do disagree. Did you say top 5?
Top 5.
Top 5. I can't see top 5. I can't see top 5. I think there's too many stronger than him. I'm looking at Adams, Diggs, the cheetah in particular. You've also got like Cup, Julio Jones. I don't think he's in the top 5 for me.
I'm going to play at your own game here though, right?
Yep.
Would you have said Cooper Kupp would have been the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy last season?
True. It's not a wild take, I don't think by any means. But I just don't think he'll be in the top 5.
And what I'll say as well, the season before last, you released Cooper Kupp to waivers and I picked him up. That's crazy to think of. Right now, that's crazy to think of. A guy that will be getting picked up in the first round of every single draft. I got.
See it every week though. How many rings you got?
Right, okay. Anyway, Tony, we move on. What's your hot take?
My hot take is the Dolphins are going to win the AFC East. There you go.
Ooh.
I got nothing to prove it, nothing to say that we're better than the Bills or the Patriots, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen this year. Fins up.
That's going to be some division this year. The Patriots, I think, are going to step up. You heard Bill Belichick talking during the week about Mac Jones has come back, a different guy, and he looks good. I think it is a hot take. I think you'll be lucky at third, mate.
The thing is, I'm still not convinced with Tua. I think there's stronger arms, there's better players out there. He still looks like he's been a year and a half he's been in that team now, but he still doesn't look as if he's in command of the team. I don't know if that was under Flores last season. I don't know if it'll be better this season, but I think you need a leader at quarterback, and I don't see him as being a leader, to be quite honest.
Yeah, certainly interesting. And Shug, hot take. Hit me with it, number 3.
My last hot take, it changed from a couple of weeks ago, but Stephen Pollock will finish last of our Fantasy Football League.
That's not really a hot take. Did they not finish second last season?
Aye, but Blackpool bound. I think to predict anybody last at the start is big talking, but I just think his eye's going to be off the prize. He's moving to Australia, as he's mentioned a few times. Time difference, he'll not be watching the games.
Yeah, I agree. And who finished last year?
What time's it, Kim?
So here's an even hotter take than Stephen Pollock finishing last in the league. My third and final hot take is I am going to win our Fantasy Football League this season.
That's
too
hot to handle.
Too hot.
Flip that up, post it. I'm confident. I've got it worked out.
Aye, you'll need to do a random draw like Drew did last year that won it.
He's rigged it 2 years in a row and got nowhere near it.
Listen, if the commissioner can't cheat his way out, then what can he do? I'm winning it this year. Put your money on me, boys. Back the big horse. Anyway, I don't think we've got much more to say tonight, but just take a second to thank our guest tonight, Tony. You've been excellent, full of information as ever. Podcast debut. How have you enjoyed yourself?
Yeah, it's been great fun. Hopefully do it again later in the season.
Yeah, definitely. And Shug, you'll be back in the hot seat next week.
Yep, looking forward to it. As I said, to echo what you said, Tony's been a great guest. As a kind of act of goodwill for how good he's been, I'll let him have the cheetah.
Oh, we'll see.
If you believe that, you'll believe anything.
I think folk are getting to know how you work in a fantasy league now, Shug. So, thank you for everyone that's listening. It's been a pleasure. We've hopefully kept you entertained for the past 45 or so minutes, but please join us next week. Please like, subscribe, follow and comment.